Welcome to the Dog Training Audio Experience Podcast. This is the podcast where you are going to get a lot of value when it comes to learning more about dog training, dog behavior, and beyond. I'm your host, Erica Gonzalez. I'm a certified dog trainer and behavior consultant and the founder of From Dusk Till Dog. And with that, let's get into the podcast. Welcome. In today's episode, we are going to talk about all things you can do to help calm your dog down. So if you have a dog that gets a little overexcited or a lot overexcited, then this episode is for you. Here to help me chat about this topic is Kelley. He is a certified professional dog trainer and owner of Pet Parent Allies located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Welcome to the show, Curtis. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Erica. I'm so excited.
I know. I feel like everybody could benefit from knowing how to calm their dogs down. I know I definitely could have if I wasn't already a dog trainer. Yay for me that I kind of knew that. But I have a dog that needed this help. So I'm excited to chat about this.
Yeah, I find a lot of clients, this is very relevant information for them.
Definitely. So before, obviously, we're going to go over some tactics. We're going to cover some things that people can start trying. But before we get into specifics about all of that, what people can do to calm their dogs down or to help calm their dogs down, what are some situations? Like generally, what are some moments where you might be like, hey, it might be a good idea to start training your dog on this or helping your dog through this type of thing? Any situations you see a lot that people can kind of look out for?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the ones off the top of my head are people coming inside or outside, doorways, and people suddenly appearing is a big one. The food dish or the food enrichment toy. If you're a fancy owner, is also a moment where dogs can get really, really excited, and being able to calm that down could benefit, especially after active events like a training session or a walk or a play session. Being able to then come down and decide like, okay, we're done. Now I can lay calmly is another great one. If you have a very social dog or a very extroverted dog, then working up to the event of like sitting with them with a coffee shop or at a happy hour could be another time when it's great to have them with you, but you want them to calmly lay next to you instead of running and jumping and pulling over to any person they see.
Yes, town, as I like to say.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Another great one is simply when they are getting cranky. Many dogs have trouble with understanding when they should calm down. This was one of them. Hello, Vista.
Oh my gosh, is that Vista?
That was Vista.
Oh, adorable. Vista's like, I want to play. Can we do that right now?
She brings her toy as kind of an offering, like, look, I've brought my toy for you. Now you come with me.
Oh my gosh, so adorable. And Freddie's very good at that game as well with me. So yeah, those are some really great examples. And you've almost left me with none to add, but I was going to say there's one other moment I feel like that might be useful, which is like, you kind of said it, but the cranky thing or these moments where I feel like people there's really nothing necessarily happening where this throws people off, where their dog all of a sudden just like, bah, and starts to get all, and you're like, what the hell happened? We were just sitting here. Especially with like younger puppies or adolescent dogs. We see that a lot. I'm sure you can agree with that. But yeah, like those random one-off like wild card moments are usually the toughest because I think the other ones make more sense to individuals of like, all right, we just played or we just did this. And I like how you touched on after playtime, after training, after we're like really engaging with our dogs. And then all of a sudden we're like, all right, we're done. No more engagement. They're like, oh no. And they're still up high. And I call that almost like if you're running on a treadmill or you're working out in some fashion, it's a quote unquote cool down time. Our bodies need that. And I think dogs are extremely similar in that regard, especially with all the attention that they're getting from us. So I love those examples. And I'm sure there's a million more we can probably think of with dogs and their people, but those are some good basic ones I think people are can relate to that happen. I know there's a ton of skills as trainers that we kind of have on our list to walk people through when they're going to start working on this of, okay, my dog's getting a little overexcited. What do I do here? What should I start working on? What are your top two skills? And I know it probably depends on the dog, of course. It's always depends upon, I feel like, with our job. But if you had to pick two top skills that people can focus on teaching their dogs, help promote calm behaviors and kind of promote down regulating, as we call it as well, what would you recommend? What's on your list?
Yeah, so my top two cues that parents can teach their dogs is one, a simple downstay if they don't already know it. And I was considering saying place, but I picked downstay instead because downstay can be done anywhere, whereas place is usually to a very specific location. So if you're outside and you need your dog to come down, if you don't have your mat, downstay will certainly suffice.
Yeah.
And the other one that I really like is a simple cue for go sniff or sniff that, or just think with your nose for a second, because the action of sniffing and really inhaling and gathering information that way for dogs is a excellent way for them to naturally calm themselves down. And I've found in a lot of situations doing them back to back. So if a dog is too excited for laying in one spot for a while, then directing them to just sniff around for a few minutes, maybe make their motion a little slower, their breaths a little longer and more extended, then gets them ready for that nice good downstay.
I love that. It's almost like I call it chopping up. You're like chopping up the moment. Like, all right, do the downstay, get paid for that. Great job. Now go sniff, go do that. All right, let's come back and do a downstay. I love doing those kind of chopping up moments because to expect your dog to be able to downstay on the first couple tries is obviously going to be difficult. So I like kind of having that. Do it real quick, get paid, then go do this other thing that's easy as well, and then we'll revisit it. So I love that. And I like that you distinguish between place and downstay. Obviously, your dog is doing a downstay when they're on a place, like you mentioned, but we are not kind of in that specific place that we need the dog to go walk over to. So they could kind of do it anywhere, which I do think is an advantage. And I will say, I'm curious to hear your experience with this. I have found just for me that when I teach place before a downstay versus teaching downstay first, I've done both, but some dogs I find actually do a little better with having a target visually with a place, even if it takes another step for the pet parent to kind of have it out. But do you find that in your experience? Because I've always thought that was quite interesting. I always saw a larger majority of the dogs I worked with were actually better if we did the place, because something visual about it just kind of was like, all right, I know what to do on there, than if we just tried to have them downstay. Have you ever experienced that? I'm kind of throwing in this question separate, but I wanted to know that.
Yeah, so for me, I've kind of found it depended upon the surface area. So because and place is usually a nice, comfy, cushy, multi-layered bed filled with bedding or padding or memory foam. That the having that material in and of itself was helpful for getting the downstay. If there wasn't a thing, then just laying a towel or a blanket, which then effectively becomes a place, was helpful for getting the dog to learn it.
I'm so glad you said that about the surface, because that's a problem I always see, and I'm glad we're mentioning it on this podcast because it is harder for most dogs to lie down on a hard surface and want to relax there than if they're on a towel, a bed, something, a pad of some kind, even one of your welcome mats, so your indoor mats by the front door in the kitchen. We all know dogs that just kind of naturally go sit on the mat. Even if we didn't train it that way in that room. So great note. So if you guys at home are working on this, having some type of, a little comfier area, regardless if you're doing place or just a regular downstay, both very good options, but you're going to have a harder time if you're trying to ask them to do it on the hard tile.
Yeah. And
Who
bonus,
wants to lay down on that? I wouldn't.
Ugh, nobody.
I need soft and plush for me.
That is the way to go.
But yeah, all right. So So a downstay and then like a go sniff type of cue. I do
Yeah.
find it's a lot as well, which is basically the same thing, which is like I toss a piece of food and I'm like, go find it, and they'll run and go get it. I use that a lot to help just calm the dogs down when someone's coming in or things like of
Yep.
that nature. So I think these are fairly easy for people to do. Anything else with the skill sets you wanted to elaborate on or add to that at all?
So I do like kind of chopping it up and giving a easy find it and then an easy stay, easy find it. I've also found that setting up, even if it's just two segments of like here, do some sniffing for a couple minutes and then go into a long down stay. And
Mhm.
as much as you need to pay it to have that dog just lay there in that one spot, even if it's a treat every 10 seconds for the
Mhm.
first couple minutes, can really help them get calmed down and centered uh, very quickly than they would otherwise.
That's a
So I like both methods.
I love that because it's going to help them kind of our timing matters. So I always say
Yeah.
the faster dog you have, and we all know like Freddie is fast, fast, fast. He's like a small squirrel running around. And then I have my pit bull Jade, who's kind of like, oh, she's kind of Eeyore like in her movements. I'm going to apologize because somebody is building a house next to our house. So enjoy the lovely construction music, background music I have today. But yeah, like Freddie's faster paced. So when I'm training him, I need to be faster paced. Unfortunately, for people who have this at home, this problem, you have to kind of match your dog's levels with that. And we're delayed, we're going to kind of be missing it. Do your best, but just know up the ante if your dog's kind of Mr. The Flash, so to speak. And then you could obviously go a little slower if your dog's a little slower moving, but timing is going to be important. So I love that you touched on that, Curtis, because if your dog's in a down, just to give you an example for those listening, if I have a dog who's just learning this and we're trying to help them calm down, I ask them to lie down. It'll literally sound like this. Yes, treat them. Yes, 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 good boy. Yes, like that's how quick in the beginning. And then as your dog does well, obviously you could slow it down where, there's more time in between your yeses or your clicks, whatever you're utilizing to mark the behavior. But just go at the dog's pace. Try to match them. As difficult as that may sound sometimes, it's going to work to your benefit. Lovely. All right, cool. So I think most people don't think about this, whether it's a puppy, an adult dog, they've just got the dog, they've had the dog for 6 years. This is something I feel in my experience over the years that most people are not thinking of, not aware of, and are not aware of the impact it has on all of the dog's behavior. But obviously we're talking about down regulating today and kind of calming the dog down. So in your expert opinion, Curtis, how does sleep schedule and when the dog's sleeping and how they're doing that and what their routine is with sleep affect their overall calmness? What are your feelings on that?
Yeah, I think that has a enormous impact on the dog's ability to regulate in actually both directions in how far up they go and how level they can stay as they're up and how well down they can go.
Mhm.
Since most dogs are dusk and twilight animals, they're awake most during sunset and sunrise.
Mhm.
That's an important thing to consider in when you're looking for them to do something active versus when you want them to be calm. Trying to have your puppy who's 5 months calm down right at 5 to 7
Oh boy.
is a tall order that I
Good
would
luck.
not want. Yeah, exactly. So knowing their circadian rhythm will be a big impact in how well they can calm themselves down, both in an acute situation and generally how where their energy levels go. And knowing that they cycle up at sunrise and then come down and rest during what's typically the hottest part of the day in the afternoon, and then cycle up again, helps give you more direction about where when they should be up and active and when you can more reasonably ask them to be calm. And a dog that is not sleeping on that nice kind of like up, down, even rhythm throughout the day, um, there might be some other environmental issues to look into. Or a dog that is sleeping too much, or a dog that can't sleep enough. Both of them might indicate there's something not quite right, something that needs to be addressed.
That's important because I think we can relate to that, right? With humans, us, if we're not sleeping well, or we're up all night and have insomnia, or we're getting really tired at lunchtime in the middle of the day out of nowhere, we're going to start going, something's going on. Is it, what else is happening in my life that's causing me to be very tired or very awake all the time? So that's so important. I'm glad that you brought up other factors. So I also want to point out that I have a lot of clients that their puppy, they have a family, there's kids around, and there's, 4 or 5 people in the home, and, the puppy is trying to sleep, or the dogs, even if it's an adult dog, trying to get some rest, because dogs do sleep a lot, and especially puppies are sleeping the majority of the day, especially if they're younger, that every time we get up or open a door or go grab a snack bag and the dog hears that, they're waking up, especially now with what we've been all going through over the last year and a half with being home a lot. I find that dogs are not getting the sleep that they would normally get. So just, I would even say, really paying attention to if your dog is shadowing you around the house, like Freddie does for me, and Jade does it too, but definitely more so Mr. Freddie. And if you think your dog's not getting enough sleep, really trying to schedule in some alone time for them. So maybe in another area of the house, as long as they don't have, anxiety being alone, that's a whole nother episode. But, put them away, let them rest for a little while, come back in when, you think they've gotten ample rest, and then they can go play again or whatnot. But really prioritizing their just quality of sleep and what they're up to is going to help your training. It's going to help your dog's overall just day to day, their well-being and everything else. Sleep's important. We all know that. And I'm
Absolutely.
definitely cranky if I'm not getting enough sleep.
I am too, and I love that mention of just scheduled, quiet, and alone time.
Yes.
I ran into when Vista was between 5 and 7 months.
Mm-hmm.
We found ourselves getting stuck a lot around in and around the house because she'd be up, she'd wander around, she'd get tired enough to where she was stumbling, she'd finally collapse, and then if we got up, she'd be up again and start the whole cycle over. So wherever she landed, we'd be like, okay, we're here for another half hour or
Nobody
so.
moves.
Like, nobody move, nobody get up. If you got to pee, too bad, you can hold it.
Hold it in. It's like a baby that finally fell asleep. You're like,
Yeah, exactly.
no one make a sound. Don't sneeze. Don't do anything. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's true. We really want to be careful with that. And I'm glad we both have stories to share about that. I really have to be on Freddie because he'll just leap off of the couch. He'll be dead asleep. And if I get up and he hears my footsteps, he'll leap off the couch and like rush over and want to know what I'm up to. So I have to sometimes close the door behind me, and then I know he just kind of stays. So those little factors, using management like that in all forms of training and everything you're doing is great, but that's a little form of management that those listening can keep in mind about. And set timers, by the way. Like, I think we're all busy, we're all running around with our heads cut off half the time about where we're going, what's coming up next, and working from home and everything that people are going through. Just kind of being aware of when the dog needs to go down for a nap, almost like a baby, or what time is good for them to start waking up so they're not oversleeping. Getting up, setting an alarm, so that way you're aware of it while you're busy doing your life stuff. And then, so I wanted to hear as well, Curtis, your thoughts on capturing calms. This is something I've spoken a lot with when I'm speaking like group classes, and I kind of have a group of people. It does become a theme I hear of, well, how do we capture calm? Aside from this proactive stuff, like working on downstays, working on place, working on, go sniff and other things to help the dog down regulate there. I know this happens organically. So I try to tell people, depending on the dog, which we'll talk about, there's ways of just organically capturing that your dog is lying down on their bed or isn't flying around the house going nuts, barking at everything or whatever. So what are your general thoughts on quote unquote capturing the calmness versus proactively trying to promote it?
Yeah, and I think this is something that every dog likes a different system.
Yes.
And while some dogs will love if they lay down on your bed and you go and give them a little treat, it will also get them too excited again. So for some dogs, you can just offer a calm little like treat, kibble, just some kind of little like not super exciting snack. For some dogs, praise is acceptable, where as long as your voice doesn't go so excited, because I also have had clients like tell me about like, oh, my dog like finally went down, and then I cheered and got really excited.
Like, oh
And then
God,
they
I'm
got
awake.
excited. So some dogs, you can give just a calm, like, yes, that's good. Just like nice, even, level, neutral voice.
Sounds like your home device. I won't mention any names so they don't go off here, but like very like neutral, encouraging but calm.
Yeah, exactly. And even if if you find your dog is not sleeping per se, but is calmly laying just around and alert, that's also a situation in which I've found for some dogs it can be helpful to then present them with a special gift. So if they get a bone or Kong or rawhide or chew, uh, because many dogs I know are smart enough to wait until they see it come out until they go and do that thing. But then it's not actually about being calm. It's about trying to work and get their bully stick or their or their bone.
Yeah.
So waiting until they've actually gone and chosen by themselves to go and lay calmly on their bed to then bring out that reward can also be
I love that you said that, because I think that's where patterns come into play of you go and they hear the crinkle or they hear you getting the Kong out of the freezer. My dogs know all that. Dogs aren't dumb. They're very aware of what we're about to do. And they'll run over and be like, I'm on my bed, give it to me, lady. They're just waiting for me, very, very excited. So, and that's totally fine. And, that's fine. But to your point, if we're trying to promote that calmness, it might be a good idea to kind of see if they organically are already doing that. And then we get up to go, grab that and give it to them. And to add to that, kind of capturing the calm, because I have a personal anecdote, I think those will find maybe humorous and maybe can relate to it with Freddie. He's my wonderful example when we're talking about how to calm dogs down. So sorry, Jade's not going to get a lot of airtime today because she's naturally a pretty calm dog. So, with Freddie, and when we got him, he had a lot of issues, wasn't ever trained. I mean, I could just tell it was a little bit of a mess. He was cute and loved people, and that was about the range that he had. So we had to work on a lot of different things, but he gets almost, like you were saying, some dogs, if we start bringing food out, he almost acts like he hasn't never been fed. It's like he's never eaten before and he's going to die if he doesn't get a piece of the popcorn I'm eating or whatever. So I had to work with him on a ton of other patience things and kind of just stimulus control around food. And he does very, very well now and is very good boy, well-mannered around that. But I will say, when I'm trying to capture calm, it is very hard for me to utilize food in that way, because he does, even if he's lying there, I know he's very excited still. So I want to say two things to that. I have utilized that calm, encouraging praise when he is lying down. And I'll be like, oh, good boy, nice job. I don't go above that, because if I go, nice job, he's like, oh, I am a good boy. And he jumps off. So you want to be delicate to that. But I'll tell you, like, he'll be very calm, and I'll even say that very calmly, and I see his tail go a little. Like, he's very movement. He's just a very outgoing guy with that stuff. So I use praise. That works great. And I will say, let's say I'm eating popcorn. This happens a lot. I love my popcorn. And so we're watching a show. Freddie's there. He's psyched. My dogs love popcorn. Jade, we say, lay as if dead. She lays on her side and will not move. She's like a statue. And that's her way of kind of, quote unquote, hoping she gets the food. which is great. I'll take it. But Freddie kind of sits nearby and he'll do this like sit pretty thing. And he'll just stare at you like that. And it's really, really uncomfortable when you're trying to show. So what I did with him was I would purposely set up training where I would get the popcorn, sit down, I'd watch a show I've seen a million times, so I'm not caring. And in the corner of my eye, at some point, he'll lie down. And he almost starts to give up a little bit in the nicest way because I haven't moved, I haven't said anything to him. I'm just eating and watching, but I'm watching him in the corner of my eye. And he finally lies down, and I don't even mark it. So I don't even say yes. I don't praise him. I just remove any other stimuli there about it. And I just will eat. And then I'll just, when I see him do it in the corner of my eye, I'll toss one down. And I won't move my body. I look like I just accidentally might have dropped it. He eats it. He gets a little bit excited. And then I see him go right back into the down again. And he kind of starts to relax. And I have found that now he'll get to that point pretty quickly, and he is still very excited, but his body looks pretty calm. And for him, it's the calmest I'm going to get with using food. So sometimes just politely ignoring your dog until they're kind of almost like, okay, this isn't happening for me right now. And that's when the food comes out. That's another little tricky thing that may work for some of these dogs, like it works for Freddie.
Yeah, the ignoring was really, really the way to go for Vista. Yeah. She often works with my wife as she teaches yoga, but for the longest time, she would lay down, probably count a minute or two, and still be very intently watching, very intently. And then upon deciding she wasn't rewarded fast enough for her very good offer of a nice, good calm down, would then get up and start stomping around again, and trying to like move blocks around and just being fairly intentionally in the way, so as to communicate to us like, hey, I did it and you didn't pay me good enough.
Hello. Yes.
So now you have to bring a treat out to pay me again. Yeah. So for Vista, the solution ended up being almost a straight ignore, where any marking and she'd be up again and like, oh, well, it's time to work. You have a job for me. I'm ready to work. Any food came out and it would be kind of the same response. Even praise a couple of times. We tried it, and in the lowest possible, like, that's so good. And she was up and just whirling around again. So for Vista, the solution ended up being just sheer outpatience.
Yeah. Sometimes that works. And I think too, less is more when, if we're trying to promote calmness, we also have to be kind of like boring and calm as well when we're interacting with our dogs here. Because if I'm working on coming when called, I'm going to be like, whoa, yeah, like very outgoing and really kind of out there with it and sounding excited. If you're trying to do the opposite, I sound the opposite. Barely saying anything, very like, oh, good job. And even if anything was Freddie, sometimes I'm not even saying anything. So really, I think the good point to take away from that too is just knowing your dog and knowing, okay, this is too much for him or her, and this is better, and adjusting based on the dog that you're working with. Because I'm going to approach it a lot differently with Jade than I'm going to approach it with Freddie. I can talk really excited to Jade and she's just like, okay. And she's there. She's like, I don't care. That's cool. How cute. And then that's it. So I could do that with her, and I know not to do that with Freddie. So, all right, cool. I'm glad we got to touch on that, because capturing calm is something that we can focus on as dog parents and try to further doing that. That might not be proactive training, might be organic. So I wanted to add this for today's discussion, because I, over the years, have dealt with a lot of behavioral cases, and that was a lot of what I was doing for the latter half of my career, is just behavior work and anxiety issues and, aggression and all sorts of stuff. And a common theme that I saw a lot, not with all of the cases, but with a lot of the cases, is there's a lot of dogs that have, not to label, but we need to say something so people understand, but hyperarousal issues, where I would go into someone's home and the dog would be immediately, jumping all over me, mouthing me a little bit all over my arms, wide eyed, tongue hanging out, breathing heavy. They seem very, they've never bitten anybody. They don't show like aggressive behaviors, but it's looking a little bit much. And I think some pet parents, obviously, they're not professional dog trainers. I don't think they should know this, but they don't understand that. And they'll be like, oh, he's so excited. He just loves when Aunt Millie comes over and just rolls all over and can't help himself. And I think sometimes people can mistake overexcitement for what and I'm sure you would label as like a hyperarousal, overstimulated type of situation where it could be a separate issue. And I just wanted to take a moment to discuss and address the differences between hyperarousal, overstimulation, and excitement. So a dog, I'll say this last thing and then I want to hear from you, Curtis, but I would say there's regular excitement, which is person walks in, dog's wagging, jello like body language, wiggly jiggly. They might jump up on you a little bit. They might bark a little bit. They're excited. Great. Then there's a little bit, maybe there's overexcited. So the dog's doing all that and jumping a little bit more, barking a little bit more, really going for it. And then hyperarousal is like they're very lovingly, but like mauling you at the door and like biting at your clothes and like their eyes are wide open. And it's looking a little bit concerning for me as a trainer there. So what are your feelings over the two? And I'd love to hear kind of your take on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for me, the height when a dog is stepping into more of a hyper aroused state, it kind of signals a loss of conscious thought.
Yes.
They kind of like they have lost control of themselves. They have lost like ability to like move and think about what they're doing.
Yep.
Versus the overexcitement is I feel more just like exuberant like greeting or exuberant interaction with something where they maybe be a little more like bouncy or like a little more like jumpy than you would like, but there's still some thought going the correct direction in their brain. Whereas hyper arousal, I think, also signifies kind of a focus difference where they've gotten so focused on just like jumping up or if they're having a negative reaction on like barking and lunging, that it's a very singularly pointed focus where like their entire existence revolves around whatever thing they're reacting to.
Right.
Whereas an overexcitement, I feel, is also kind of a little bit more diffuse, where they might be like jumping and waggling and dancing around, but maybe like bouncing between people or like moving a lot, kind of in a circle or a figure eight. Like there's still it's spread out more. And I've also found that like a dog can be hyper aroused and standing perfectly still.
Very, very true. I'm glad that you said that. Doesn't always have to look a certain way to be a certain way.
Yeah. So I draw the line at hyper arousal is a like kind of total loss of conscious control, and a very like singularly pointed focused energy.
Yeah. And I like using like weird human analogies for things. So it's almost like, it's almost like someone who has had a little too much to drink.
Yeah.
You can't have like a nice in-depth conversation with them right now, and, we have to sober up a bit to be able to have that conversation at a better time. Or if somebody is really panicked or has, they have a spurt of anxiety and they are having a panic moment, that's not the time they're not in the right space to think through and process information and take in information properly. And same thing goes for hyperarousal. Excuse me, we got a sneeze today as well on this podcast. So, but yeah, so I'm glad that we got to go over those differences. And I would say, if your dog seems uncontrollably quote unquote excited, then we might be more in the bucket of hyperarousal, where, full disclosure, hyperarousal to me as a trainer, in the nicest way, is concerning. Where a dog who's overexcited, yeah, we need to work on it or whatever, if they want to work on jumping or whatever it is, but I'm not concerned. Where a dog who's having hyperarousal stuff that they're displaying, I'm usually more concerned, where I'm like, okay, this could lead to something else, because they aren't thinking, and that's a problem. When an animal with sharp teeth, or might be big, or might be around kids, and I'm not saying they're going to like kill anybody or whatever, but that's an issue if they're not processing information when a stranger walks in, or you have small children around, or a guest is over, or whatever, you're out. So we want to really be aware of that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think hyperarousal in itself suggests some additional management techniques
Right.
or barriers toward doing specific actions. Whereas an overexcitement, yeah, I would say usually in a training sense can be handled with some redirection or some incompatible behaviors
Right.
versus the hyperarousal is where you really start to need, like, okay, something needs to be like between
Yeah,
this
like your
dog.
dog needs to be behind a gate now. Like, this is
Yeah,
the time to try to train them right in this moment.
yeah,
That's good. I'm actually going to say one more thing with that, because you just raised that point for me in my head, where management, aside from everything we're talking about today with what to train and what to consider and what to look for, management plays a huge role in any training program, in my opinion. And if you're training something, if your dog is really hyper aroused, if you're not sure how your dog is going to act in any type of situation, always start with management. If you're not sure, or you don't know how to handle it yet, and you're waiting to hire a professional dog trainer to come and help you, which I highly recommend if you are concerned about this stuff. But having your dog behind a gate, now your dog can't jump all over Aunt Millie and mouth at her sweater and potentially scratch your 6-year-old nephew or whatever is going on, because the more your dog is practicing doing that, the more pissed off you're going to be, and upset and frustrated and feeling sad about it. And your dog's practicing the thing that we're trying to decrease and hopefully eliminate at some point if possible. So management is a huge thing, and don't feel defeated if you have to put your dog behind a gate. It's actually, all dog trainers would be very thrilled to hear that you're doing that. At least the good one, any good one, I feel like, is going to be like, yes, that's great. So management is always a safe choice if you're not sure how to handle things. So thank you for that, Curtis. I love the management point there. We can add in at the last minute here. So final question. I wanted to, I kind of like asking, misconceptions, misunderstandings, myths about things, like, and this isn't necessarily a hugely controversial topic or anything like that, but what do you feel is a common misunderstanding, or something that people perceive wrong, or not in the best way, when it comes to the topic of teaching dogs to calm down?
yeah. One thing that I find a lot of people run into is that if your goal is for your dog to calm down, that a lot of people, I think, get this idea that the dog must be responding to every single cue about sit and down and stay and go sniff and like all of these things, where it's really a moment as the human to step back and say, is the dog calmer than he was like a minute ago or 5 minutes ago, or even like 15 seconds ago, if the thing that he was excited about has left.
Mhm.
um, but I think it's a practical misunderstanding in how hands-on people need to be about getting their dog to calm down after an exciting event, or just in general. A lot of people that I have been working with have gotten maybe like 20 seconds into a downstay, and then the dog gets up and they go, no, this
Oh, you're
everything is
doing it.
wrong. What are you doing? And I go, it's fine. If they need to stand up and like shift around for a bit for 15 seconds,
Yeah.
we just get them back and have them go down. It's
Yeah.
also, they're not going to learn how to do this on the very first time of practicing.
Exactly.
It takes consistent effort over a period of weeks sustained before a dog really builds those neural pathways to be able to calm themselves down
That
without needing the encouragement.
I love that. Yeah, people get, I don't blame them. They have a high bar. They're trying to get their dogs to do it. But I always say, like, have really low expectations in a great way. Like, obviously we want all these things, but if you set the bar really low, you won't be like, oh God, it got off, and be really, really feeling defeated, because as dog trainers, we know, well, hey, you just did it for 20 seconds. Like, I know we got up at the end, but the 20 seconds was amazing. Like,
Yeah.
focusing on what we just accomplished rather than, okay, it's over now and now it sucks and training's done. It's part of the process, like you're getting at with that. And so I would say, that's a great point. I think another kind of misunderstanding, if you will, that people have with this is it really can be quite simple, because I think sometimes it can feel, oh my gosh, I have to do all this training, or oh my gosh, I don't know how to handle all this. My dog's crazy. They feel like their dog's nuts or whatever during these moments. And I tell people, hey, it could be as simple as, let's say you're in the process of teaching your dog a downstay, or you're in the process of teaching them what go sniff means, or go find it. Or let's say your dog gets so excited that they don't even care about the food that you have in your hands, because that happens. Maybe it's something as simple as having something really special, peanut butter in a Kong. I don't care if you put raw meat in a Kong. I don't care. Whatever you think your dog can handle and that you like, or that you feed your dog. It could be their food. Anything that's going to get their attention, that they're going to really, really enjoy, or something special. Person comes in, you could have your dog behind a gate or on a leash in another room or away from the door, and see if maybe they want to engage with the Kong for a few minutes on the floor, or see if they love playing tug with this particular toy and they just go nuts for it. And again, I'm not saying this isn't helping them down regularly if we're doing like tug in that moment, but I'm getting at a misunderstanding of, like, if they're not trained yet to do it, you can find other things with a toy, a food puzzle, redirection, other things, management, like we talked about, that can still help you not get the behavior we're getting away from, which is like jumping on the guest in this example. But even something like chewing on a bully stick or chewing on a Kong is calming for them. And it's not really like we're doing a bunch of training. It's just, hey, Aunt Millie came in. Let's see if my dog will walk over here into the other room and chew on this peanut butter thing. Because a lot of dogs will. Now, this isn't a recipe for success for every single dog on the planet, but it is something people can try that I think it doesn't have to be super complex. It could be as easy as, like, hey, do this instead and chew on this. You're going to love it. And they might lie down and chew on it and be amazed that Aunt Millie walked all the way in, sat down. The dog's like, great, Aunt Millie, sorry, I'm going to choose the Kong today. And people, I've had that happen with clients right away, and they're like amazed, and they've just never thought to try something. And it's very simple. So I just want to add, we can keep it very simple, and all these tactics were pretty attainable, but I wanted to add that to it. And lastly, I have a lot to say about this apparently, but last thing I wanted to say about that was, it's, I think you kind of went on this too, is like, it doesn't mean your dog has to like comply with every single thing we're saying. And like, again, having such a high bar for what calmness means, and just kind of, if it's a little bit better, we're going for better, not perfect. I know a lot of us trainers say those types of phrases to our clients, but you're just looking for it to be less crappy than before. That's the barometer we're using. So if it's less crappy, you're doing a great job. And just as you go, it should get less and less crappy during that moment. And then, you're on the right track. If it's getting worse, then obviously we need to change something. But as long as it's, getting even 5%, 10% better, that's great. 5 or 10% increase on something of an improvement is a good improvement. So we just have to build on it. So be patient, take your time, be empathetic. Your dog's doing the best they can. And it's not the worst problem in the world that they're excited and happy and trying to, be excited in your home.
No, a dog who's excited to see a stranger is lovely, I think.
I'll take it.
There are way worse directions that could go.
Right.
Right.
And
what I am also always telling people is that progress is never linear.
Correct.
If you look at this day and tomorrow and like the next day, then you have very little information,
Right.
especially as I no person's mood is the same day to day to day to day.
No.
So just accepting that and you look on a scale of a month or 2 months, then you have less days that you're unhappy with,
Right.
or days that you are unhappy with are still better than how they were.
Exactly.
Or you might even have a surprise moment where your dog did the thing and you didn't have to say it. But like expecting for it to be a straight, nice, even line is just not a reasonable expectation for really any living organism.
Exactly. Life doesn't work that way, folks. Life doesn't work that way. And so embracing, and I try to share this on my page all the time, like my dogs aren't perfect. And I like that we share things that, you were sharing what happens with Vista and how you work through it. And I was sharing with Freddie, even dog trainers have issues we're working through and training that we're doing. And, it isn't this like we get to a certain point in our training where it's like, all right, we're never working on this again. I'm never worried about it. And my dog's programmed like a microwave setting, so it's totally okay if your dog's not perfect. We're not perfect. We are just trying to do the best that we can to get through these things in life in general with our dogs. So I'm glad that we can end on that note of just having an understanding with our dogs that just as imperfect as we are and just as our day to day differs and we do our best, same thing for our dogs. They're doing the best they can here. So awesome. Curtis, this was great. I'm so glad we got to talk through this. I know people are going to be thrilled to hear about how they can calm their dogs down and try some of this stuff at home. But before we go, I want you to let everyone listening know how they can connect with you and any projects you're up to or things you're offering, anything that they can look out for.
Absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram at petparenteducation_CPDT-KA. You can go to my website at petparentallies.com. Or if you're in the Philly area and you see a purple shirt walking around, feel free to come and say hi.
Oh, love that. Love that. I love my purple on my page too. So I love the purple get up, man. It's so great. But yeah, definitely. So check Curtis out. And I'll have our Instagrams up so they can follow you through. And Curtis, this was great. I'm so glad we were able to connect on this. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And again, for those listening, treat yourself and treat your dogs.